Garakai Chanza is a postdoctoral fellow at the School of Journalism and Media Studies, Rhodes University. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Journalism and Media Studies from Rhodes University, with his dissertation focusing on activist radio and the struggle to empower audiences, a case study of Zimbabwe. In preparation for a paper on podcasting in Zimbabwe, he conducted an interview via WhatsApp with veteran award-winning guitarist and music producer Clive Mono Mukundu regarding his involvement in podcasting. The discussion occurred on Sunday, January 12th, 2025. Monoverzation.
Okay, thank you very much, Clive, for accepting to talk to me on this project. I really appreciate. When did you start realizing this medium of podcasting?
What happened is around 2010, I had joined YouTube. As a musician, I was looking for content that has something to do with music. I noticed that there was very few content on Zimbabwean music. There was this one guy, I think he's from America or Europe, was trying to teach Zimbabwean guitar, but the way he was teaching it was very wrong. So I said to myself, instead of getting angry, why not do my own videos? Because there are very few videos of Zimbabwean guitar or Zimbabwean music online. So maybe I should do something about it. So I started around 2010 to do educational videos where I would be teaching Zimbabwean guitar or Zimbabwean music, mainly concentrating on Chimurenga guitar and Sungura guitar. So that's how it started. But talking of what we now call podcasting, it's a recent thing. There was a time that I was speaking to Chibodoro, Philip Soshe, and Keith Ferguson. It was around the same time when I spoke to those three guys. And I was noticing that they've got a lot of information, a wealth of information that is never mentioned by the band leaders that they played for. So I contacted a number of popular podcasts here in Zimbabwe, and I begged them to interview those guys so that we preserve history, because I'm very big on preserving our history, our music history as Zimbabweans. But some of them replied, some of them did not reply. Some of them said, you know what, when it comes to music, we want to interview people who sing, I mean, the band leaders and the artists themselves, because they've got the numbers. And those people that work behind the scenes, they don't have the numbers. So we cannot interview them. So that's when a friend of mine said, why don't you interview them yourself? And I said, you know what, I don't have the numbers. Number two, I don't have the equipment. I just use my phone. And he just said, no, start with where you are and with what you have. So that's when I started doing what I call artist-to-artist MonoCasts, where basically I speak to people who work behind the scenes who are not known. People like your dancers, music producers, guitarists, and so forth. And I'm happy that people are loving it.
Very interesting information coming from you here. You said you discovered someone who was trying to teach Zimbabwean guitar, Zimbabwean music, the instruments from Europe, and you said, no, this is wrong. I want to correct it. Then you started doing this. But we know that in Zimbabwe, we have got the state media, we've got television, we've got radio stations. Now I think there are somewhere about 10 radio stations now. Surely, were they not doing enough for you guys maybe to showcase your talents, or to interview you or give you some sessions so that you could invite these artists and interview them, host them with your knowledge?
I've been invited to a lot of interviews. I think I'm one of the most interviewed artists in Zimbabwe.
Today's guest is
known as Mono
Mukundu.
Monolio Mono Mukundi.
Mono Mukundu.
Clive Mono Mukundu.
Clive Mukundu, well known as Mono Mukundu.
Clive
Mono Mukundu.
The man himself, Clive Mono Mukundu.
Mono Mukundu.
Clive Mono Mukundu in the studio.
Clive Mono Mukundu.
Clive
Mono Mukundu.
I started interviews, I think, around early 90s. So I cannot say they were not doing anything, but you know how it is with musicians. We are artists. We've got a lot of ideas. So as artists, we are innovators. So I think it was some innovation that they never thought about. So I cannot really blame them for not coming up with those ideas because they are not artists.
What's your understanding now about this medium which is called podcasting?
One thing I love about podcasting is that it's broadcasting, yes, but it's different from terrestrial TV. Because with terrestrial TV, once it's broadcast, it's gone. Unless they repeat it, and usually they don't. But with podcasting, the good thing is once you post it on social media, on YouTube or any other platform, it's there for life. And people can even use it in academic papers as reference. And the other thing that I like about podcasting is that the way podcast interviews or discussions are held is totally different from the way terrestrial TV does. I even had a problem with the number of my followers who were saying, you know what, you are supposed to ask a question to the guests and then you keep quiet and let them talk. And I said, no, that's not how I want to do things. I want to do this thing very differently. Because if you check online, there are more than 8 different formats of our podcasts conducted. Some are discussions.
Enough to make you think you were going to die.
Some have got no moderators.
Hang on one second.
Some of them, everybody will be speaking.
I don't, but that's cat. You date.
The one format that I like is the discussion format, where I'll be speaking to an industry insider, and I'm also an industry insider. So I cannot be like a terrestrial TV interviewer who asks a question about an industry he doesn't understand. I also understand this industry. I've been there for 37 years. So when I ask a question, I also contribute to the answer as well, because I know the answer. So that's one thing I like about podcasting. There are no restrictions as terrestrial TV interviews. Even on time, I remember I did an interview on the Danny J show. It was 3 hours. It was the longest they'd ever done on their show until Superman Wanzera came and beat my record.
So other than your own work, Clive, do you have any examples of podcasts that demonstrate the power of this medium we are talking about?
Yeah, in Zimbabwe, my favorites, like the Danny J show, Ola Seven's podcast, and Haku Stream. There's another one called Haku Stream. And I think Haku Stream was the first podcast that really gave me time to speak uncensored. So I think some of the podcasts that invited me later, they got a lot of ideas from the Haku Stream interview. Was one thing about podcasts is that there are no limitations. You can even swear. No going to tuka. And so it's so relaxed. You speak like Mango Tanda. So the way I speak on a podcast is the way I speak takalaksa tichiona band show or relaxed, just hanging out. So podcasts are very natural. You speak in a very natural way, like you are in a normal setup.
What motivated you into podcasting, and also what connected you into that business?
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, I've got a serious passion of documenting our music history in Zimbabwe. So I noticed that people who work behind the scenes, like session guitarists, musicians, band members, and so forth, they've got a lot of information that is very useful for our history. But podcasters and people who do interviews, they don't want to interview them or engage them because they don't have the numbers. Behind the scenes, so they don't have the numbers. So those are the type of people that I want to speak with, so that I've got something unique and also be able to document history with a different viewpoint than those who sing or those who are superstars. At times, somebody can be a superstar, yet they know nothing about the music industry. It happens a lot, but people don't know. They think that if somebody is popular, they know everything.
Yeah, what also interests me, Clive, is the fact that you have been in the music industry for almost now you can now talk of for 4 decades, and you interview the people in your industry, so you have vast information, vast knowledge in that. So that takes me to my question. Your involvement in podcasting. Also, you told me that you are part of the answer to the questions you will be asking. Interesting. So I want to get an understanding here. Your involvement in podcasting and the type of content which you do produce.
Yeah, the type of content that I produce is always music. I'm all about music. I'm not interested in gossip, in everyday gossip, and in everyday news. All my podcasts are all about music. So I will just be discussing music, what happens behind the scenes, how songs are created, how music is recorded, and what happens in the bands and so forth. So it's all to do with the music industry, with the Zimbabwe music industry.
Yeah. Talk to me about your recent project where you interview those musicians or artists who are behind the scene. I think that's when you can just explain that to me now.
Okay, that one I call it artist to artist MonoCasts. That's the main one. So with that one, I will be documenting and speaking to artists like musicians, like I've mentioned, musicians, and asking questions that answers a lot of questions. Because, for example, a lot of people think that if somebody is the band leader, he's the one who goes around telling every band member what to play. He tells the bass player, play like this. He tells the lead guitarist, play like this. Rhythm guitarist, play like this. But they don't know that the musicians are actually composers who compose their own lines. In most cases, when a singer comes with a new song, they just start singing. Then the bass player creates his bass line, the lead guitarist creates his melody lines, and they work together to work on the song. But people, the ordinary people, think that all the credit goes to the one who is holding the microphone. So those are some of the secrets that I want to to debunk and let people know that a lot happens behind the scenes, and there's a lot of contribution that comes from those people that you think are wanabasa. For example, people like me, before the coming of the internet, a lot of people didn't know me. So when I started being active on social media, a lot of people were asking me, where were you all this time? And I was telling them, you were dancing to my guitar lines for the past 4 decades and you didn't even know that it's me. Most of the popular songs that you dance to, I'm the one who created and played those guitar lines, but you did not know that it's me. The music industry is very unfair. It puts all the focus on the one who is holding the microphone. But at times, it's people behind the scenes who will have done all the work on.
I understand that, Clive. So I was about to say you're also a victim of that.
Yeah.
Because it was actually good time Oliver Mtukuzi and the Black Spirits. You see, Thomas Mafumo
And the Blacks Unlimited.
Blacks, you see now. But the Unlimited part of it now, the band could have 15-20. We are not even told about their name. So thank you very much for coming up with that initiative. And I see a lot of people really like it and they're enjoying it, including me anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So, Clive, what would you say are the achievements you have accrued so far since you started this business of podcasting and profiling musicians and those who are behind the scenes?
My biggest achievement is to debunk the mysteries of what happens behind the scenes in the music industry, as well as educating musicians and music lovers about the legal side of the music industry. Because there's been a lot of misinformation concerning the legalities of the music industry. Like if you still remember when that World Cup, the last World Cup was hosted, there was a lot of talk of a song that was plagiarized, and there was a lot of misinformation. So I was part of the panel of judges that gave the final decision to say that this song was not plagiarized. So I took it upon myself to educate musicians and music lovers and all stakeholders in the music industry about the legalities of the music industry, so that they know what plagiarism is and what plagiarism is not. So I think I can say I've contributed a lot. I think I've done something. So I think that's one area which I feel I've contributed a lot to the music industry.
I understand that, Clive, in your work, there's something which you can say, this is working very well. And also, there are some areas which you could see, maybe I need to grow so that I improve. So can you tell me about what you can say, wow, this is working, and where you feel you need also to grow?
Every wise musician or every wise whoever or whoever does anything knows that education never stops. If you ask my wife and my family, every time I go on the TV, I don't sit to watch a movie. I don't sit to look for rumors or gossip. I'm always looking for educational material. I'm always watching podcasts that talk about music production, that talk about songwriting, because I'm a songwriter as well, that talk about the music industry. So I'm always learning. So when it comes to learning, I'm never satisfied, no matter how much praise I'm giving. So when it comes to learning, I'm a student for life. That's why I even went back to college for that degree. And I'm not even stopping there because I would like to do a master's and a PhD later. But answering your question, I'm a student for life. I never stop learning. But when it comes to contributions, contributions by people like me who work behind the scenes usually go unnoticed. But if you ask a lot of guitarists and a lot of musicians, they will tell you that most of them, they learned from my guitar skills directly or indirectly. A number of guitarists who are active right now in the music industry, they learned a lot from my work. But you sound like you are being proud or you are blowing your own horn. So I never speak about it, and I let them speak about it. I consider myself to be a very successful musician. And when we talk of success, people usually want to measure success in coins or in money. But that's not success. People like Albert Einstein died, millionaires, but he's one of the most successful scientists in the world. So I consider myself to be very successful because I've contributed a lot in the development of the music industry in Zimbabwe. And I'm still active as I was in the 90s up to today. And I'm featured on over 1,000 local albums. A lot of hits have got my fingerprint. So I consider myself to be one of the most successful musicians in Zimbabwe, but not in terms of money. But as I said before, success is not measured in coins.
Can you tell me about opportunities that have come your way since you started this podcasting business?
One of the opportunities is 2018, I was invited to the University of Michigan. They contacted me through Chido Johnson. So I was invited to lecture Zimbabwean guitar at the University of Michigan. And it's an opportunity that came through podcasting. And then last year, I was sponsored by the government through the Ministry of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture to go to Jamaica to attend a conference and learn from the Jamaicans. And it's through the podcast that I've been doing. And after coming from Jamaica, I did a lot of interviews. I did a lot of podcasts. I did a lot of speaking engagements, explaining what I learned from the Jamaican music industry. So all those opportunities are coming through podcasting. I also use the opportunity to showcase how I play the guitar, how I produce music, and it's also bringing clients to my studio.
Yes. How would you evaluate the effectiveness of podcasting in achieving your goals?
It's very effective. Of course, there's no quantifiable way of measuring the percentages and everything, but it's a very effective way of showcasing my talent, also of disseminating information about the music industry. Because right now, a lot of people are telling me that we did not know anything about the music industry, this legal side and the technicalities, but we now know them because of your podcast. In fact, right now, we are in the era where the description of an illiterate person is not someone who cannot read, but it's someone who is not aware of what's happening. Because right now, with the advent of the internet, the podcasts, and all that's happening on the internet, there's a lot of positive information. But I'm very saddened by the fact that most Zimbabweans, when they go on the internet, they are just looking for like pornography, gossip, and everything. But there's a lot of education on the internet, especially through podcasts. But you need to be careful because there are some who just post stuff when they know nothing. And usually people who have got nothing are the ones who speak the loudest. I think you need to approach it academically, what they do in the academic world, where they look for people who are authorities in the industry. If it's a health subject, look for people who are authorities in the health sector. If it's about music, look for people who are authorities in the music industry. And you know how it is with the people, they look down upon the music industry. Everybody thinks they're an expert.
So I wanted to ask you, Clive, to comment a little bit on the feedback which do come when you post your podcast. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the feedback has been mostly positive, but you know how it is with on the internet, you always find one or two people who are very negative. And but the good thing about me is I block people. Anybody who comes with the negative vibe, I block people. I was watching Vibes Cartel's interview and he was saying, I block them.
Block them.
So I also block them.
Yeah, come in negativity, walla block.
Because some people just bring negative energy. We've got such people worldwide, but the majority of the feedback was very positive. But I made a few adjustments after listening to some constructive criticism. Like one of them was saying that they didn't want me to put background music underneath when I'm speaking, and I removed it. I think I made a few, about 3 or 4 adjustments that were very positive, where people were giving me constructive criticism on. But there are times when somebody starts with an insult and then calls it constructive criticism. There's nothing constructive about an insult. So if someone insults me,
block them.
I understand that there are also some challenges which you have encountered. Can you talk about that in brief?
I can't really say that I've encountered any challenges. What I'm seeing right now is just positive feedback. But of course, my biggest challenge is generally a lack of equipment and so forth. But that won't stop me because, you know, as Zimbabweans, we are not stopped by such things. But I cannot really say I got any much negative feedback, except for when I was invited for other podcasts, especially when they talk of such topics like religion. On my podcast, I never mentioned religion. I've got my beliefs, which a lot of people do not agree with, but I try to avoid them as much as possible on my Facebook page and on my podcast. But if you invite me on your podcast and you ask me about it, I'll tell you exactly what I believe. I'm not ashamed of what I believe. So talking of negative feedback, that's where I really got negative feedback, because I had pastors calling me and church elders calling me, Christians calling me, and some were very angry. And I told them, guys, you know what? If you hate me because I left Christianity, you're not doing Jesus a favor, because according to your Bible, Jesus still loves me. And you are supposed to leave the rest of the flock and follow me and bring back to church rather than insulting me. But basically, answering your question, the only negative feedback that I can talk about is when I was invited to other podcasts where I talked about religion, why I left religion. So that's the only negative feedback that I got.
Mm-hmm. What's your general assessment of podcasting in Zimbabwe, Clive?
It's growing, but we have other podcasts that I think that really need to change the way they do their things, because some of them, they rush to say things which they don't know about and which they've not researched about. If you look how the terrestrial TV journalists work, it's very rare for them to clash with musicians the way podcasters do in Zimbabwe. The reason why is that terrestrial TV broadcasters do it professionally. They use journalism ethics. You don't report about something using your own information. You do it academically. You look for authorities in the industry and you ask them, and then they give you the correct information or information that is reliable, rather than making yourself an authority and then say statements that are very misleading. So I think that's one area that we still need to improve in Zimbabwe, because we've got a lot of people, especially Kweduku music, we've got a lot of people who want to call themselves experts in the music industry when they know nothing about the music industry. They've never played in a band, they've never managed a band, they've never formed a band, but you hear them talking about very sensitive issues about the music industry without asking authorities in the music industry. That's a serious lack of journalism ethics. And it discredits your podcast, it discredits you. So I think that's one area that we really need to fix in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, so I take it that it's also one of the challenges which have been brought by the democratization of these communicative platforms, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got a lot of people who are now turning into motivational speakers, life coaches, and some of them, they touch specific areas that really needs experts. And then they just consider themselves experts. I see a lot of sexologists, and some of the stuff they say, that area, you can tell this person knows nothing, but they just have got the voice and the courage to do it. So I think there should be some laws which should be enacted as time goes on to limit such discrepancies.
I think I would not do justice if I don't ask you to comment about internet technology. How far are we vis-a-vis podcasting?
Last time I was checking out the figures, our percentage is too low as compared to other countries. Even if we are talking about people in town, our percentage is too low as well, because data is very expensive in Zimbabwe. And also looking at the economic situation in Zimbabwe, we're at an all-time low. I was reading somewhere where they were saying that the average pay for Zimbabweans is something like $200 or $250. That's what most people are getting paid. So for that person to buy data, to pay for the internet, it's expensive. So I think at the moment we are not doing that well. We seem to be doing well because those on the internet, they make a lot of noise, but judging by the numbers, I think we are not doing very well yet.
When you are doing content production or podcasting, which language do you use and why?
If I'm speaking to somebody who is comfortable with English, I use English. Like if you look at the interview that I did with Iyasa, I was speaking to Nkululeko Dube, and the interview that I did with Joanna from Blawayo, I used English. But there are some people who are not comfortable with English, and it's understandable. So I use Shona. And then there are people who are comfortable with Shonglish, will be jumping into English, jumping into Shona. So it depends with the person that I'm speaking to. But the reason why I prefer English is because I've got followers from other countries as well. I've got a very good number of followers from Kenya, Botswana, South Africa, Zambia, Malawi. So it will be easy for them to watch and understand if we use English. But if somebody cannot understand or is not comfortable with English, I'll be forced to use Shona.
Yeah, as we conclude this discussion, Clive, how do you see podcasting in Zimbabwe, the future of it? Where are we going?
I think we are going to see more and more podcasts. I know a number of people right now who are busy setting up studios for podcasts. But just like any other technological advancement, it's very difficult to predict. Those who would have thought right now, as technology advances, big studios will be closing and will be left with home studios. But that's what's happening in our music industry right now. Big studios, yes, around the world, they are closing. And the people are now utilizing small studios that used to be mocked a few years ago. People would say, you're recording at a home studio. But right now, if you check on the internet, a lot of big studios, of major studios, all the major studios around the world, they are closing down. And people are now using the small home studios. So the same thing with podcasting. It's very difficult to predict. But one thing that I know is that we are going to have more podcasts. That one is inevitable.
I understand this is an industry, a creative industry. What do you want to see happen for it to grow?
I would like for people to be honest, those who venture into podcasting, to engage in podcasts where they are experts If you're an educationist, you can do a podcast about education. If you're into the medical field, do a podcast about the medical field. I am in the music field, so my podcasts are all about music. But the danger is when people venture into topics that they are not qualified to talk about, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah, lastly, like stakeholder support. Are you for that?
Yeah, I do subscribe to that because I told you that every time I sit on the TV, I'm always looking for educational content because I use a smart TV, so it's always on the internet. And every time I look at, I watch like podcasters from the States, from Europe and other places. They've got sponsors who come to advertise their stuff on their podcast. And I'm sure you know of Joe Rogan is the biggest podcast in the world. He earns millions from that. So yes, I would love to see that happening because it's a very good employment opportunity as well.
Clive, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Monoverzation.